Hey everybody, this is David and welcome to the Module 4 Fireside Chat. I am just going to bring out 4 pages of notes today for the Fireside Chat. And actually, you can only, the top section here, which is about a paragraph, that's kind of like the updates from Module 4, Module 5. The rest, all shout outs. All shout outs. So listen in for your shout out. All right. And to see if anybody in class won a brand new Chrysler Cordoba from Viterbo University. Hasn't happened yet. Doesn't mean that it will not happen. So a few things. One is I just got done doing a 2-hour show. With a guest and hiccups, which is never good to do a show with a guest. That's when you kind of like try to turn it over to the guest, have them talk. And then I was on a show, not last night, I think 2 nights ago, that I have to do a little follow-up on. So just some kind of crazy stuff. But very glad to do the Fireside Chat. And I want to start out with a couple short little anecdotes. You know, I know your time's valuable, but also I hope there is some value and some reflection in these chats for you. So I don't know those of you who remember the Susan B. Anthony dollar. It was a coin. It was like 8-sided. At least I don't know, I think it was. But I don't believe they make them anymore. And back in my... So this is I think I've talked about this before. It's like, okay, so this arm appears lower in the video, yet the arm is about 4 inches higher than the other arm. So I don't know. It's like a mysterious place you go, yeah, like where the broom like tilts uphill and water flows uphill and stuff like that. So I don't know, but I guess we just have to go with it. So anyway, the Susan B. Anthony dollars. So when I was in college back in the 90s, well, college perpetually, kind of forever, but college back in the 90s, and the grocery store. So it wasn't very convenient to buy stamps. I guess, yeah, I mean, you could go to a post office, of course, but the grocery store had stamps. So they had a stamp vending machine. And basically, like, I don't know, to get a book of stamps would be like $2-3, and it'd take like a $5 bill or a 10 or something like that. So you put a 5 or a 10 in, and what it would do is it'd give you your stamps, but then it would give you the change. Anything that was like $1, it would give you in a Susan B. Anthony dollar coin, which basically were, you know, it was this mysterious thing. It's like, what is this? Like, you know, and retailers weren't that used to them, and you couldn't use them in anything. It's not like any type of vending machine took them. So then you'd have to find some way to like get rid of these Susan B. Anthony dollars. So it kind of reminded me back when I was a kid. I was like maybe 9-10 years old, maybe younger than that. I would save up some money, and it's pretty frugal, you know, with my money, but I would save up money, and the fair would come to town, and they had a machine. You basically would insert tokens, and they would roll down, and there'd be a bulldozer, and it would push these tokens forward, and then anything lying on top, if it fell down the chute, you got it. And they used to have belt buckles, and I think they're made out of copper, so like not super great quality, but still like not super cheap. I mean, this was back in, you know, the early 80s, so you know, stuff was pretty decent quality. So it had like, yeah, all these different belt buckles that I spent way too much for getting. But they kind of reminded me of those coins. It's kind of like, is this an arcade coin? No, it's actually worth $1. Okay, so I'm like, oh, I don't know. Anyway, so the story is I came at like I got 2 of these the other day. I don't know where, but it was someplace I bought something, and then I got like two Susan B. Anthony dollars as change. So I'm like, oh, I don't know. So now you got to find someone who's willing to take it. Is this real currency? It's not like a token from Coney Island. No, it's real currency. So I suppose I can always like put it in my container of change for the bank and then eventually take it there. But so anyway, liking the nice warm weather here in October. 74 degrees, I think, today, and I remember playing high school football, which I think is pretty much now in the playoffs. But I remember, I grew up in northern Wisconsin, playing the last couple seasons in snow, like snow-covered field. I mean, that was just pretty typical. Or else, you'd go out there and it'd be 20 degrees or something like that. So, I mean, it's nothing like it is now. So let us talk here. And I'm filming this in a different program, so I'm modifying a few things because I am doing a little more consulting. So what you see in back of you has to be updated to a little more of a professional standard, which it will happen at some point here. But this is a different program I'm recording with. And I notice there's a few glitches in the recording software, which won't interfere with really anything. But so anyway, Module 4, Fireside Chat, is where we're at today. And Module 5 begins on Monday, October 23rd. It runs through Sunday, November 5th. For those of you who are thinking about it, my birthday is on Tuesday, November 7th. So coming up 2 weeks from Tuesday. So we will be firmly in Module 6 at that time, and getting kind of close to the end of class. So they'll open probably the last 2 modules up at the same time. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in and update all of your grades this weekend, and then I will make a post in class. So under where it says announcements, it'll say, hey, everybody's grades have been updated. Please check your grades. If you have any questions, let me know. But wait till I put that post in. I'll update grades this weekend. So Rita Pearson and Module 4. I love the video. A number of you have said you've seen it before. Well, it's pretty popular. Schools use that. There's a couple things that stick out from that video. One is a student who had, had 20 problems and had 17 wrong, but she wrote a +3 on the paper or something like that. And just the way of framing it from a deficit perspective to positive, saying, hey, you got this many wrong, but here's the deal. You got 3 right, so next time you're going to get more right. And wow, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So think about it. So it's all in how you kind of frame things. And Rita Peterson did that. Like when she took her 3rd grade class and said, you guys are the best of the school, and we are put together to be an example to others. And then the students just rose to that expectation, to that standard. So you go into a kindergarten class, almost any kindergarten class, and if you say, like, who's the fastest runner in here? All the hands shoot up. I'm the fastest runner. I'm the fastest runner. I'm the fastest runner. You change that up a little bit. You get to like 4th grade, and you go into class and say, who's the fastest runner? They're like, Jamie. Jamie's the fastest runner. Everybody points Jamie. They've done that filtering out. So, but Rita Pearson, really powerful stuff. So in Module 5, we get into co-teaching. So expanding your knowledge base about co-teaching. Co-teaching is frankly one of those conflated terms. I mean, when we think about co-teaching, a lot of us, it's really a special education teacher. It's a teaching assist model who's in a regular education classroom who's helping students with disabilities, maybe a few other students. So it's really not the special education teacher delivering the instruction. I mean, that's most of the models that I've seen that are badged as co-teaching are authentically not co-teaching, where it is balanced. If you ask the students, who is the teacher in the class, they would say, those are the teachers. That's like a co-teaching model. If you say, like, who are the teachers? They're like, that's the teacher. That's the special ed person who helps out the special ed kids. Teaching assist. So, but yeah, you'll get an understanding of co-teaching. There is a rubric that's shared. You don't have to produce a co-teaching assignment, but the rubric is there to help give you some guidance on what to look for in co-teaching models and various co-teaching documents. I'm a fan of co-teaching. I think it's an underutilized model. Adjust the microphone a little bit here. So this is the same studio arm that Howard Stern uses on his show, but I can guarantee this is not the same studio mic that Howard Stern uses on his show. Anyway, yeah, so it's really underutilized, I think, co-teaching. And then there's also things like, station teaching, like a student goes to a station and they might experiment with like a prism and a light and stuff like that. I think that, there's opportunities for that. We still have a lot of the traditional kind of lecture type models of like the teacher is the sage, the deliverer of content, the receiver of the content is the student. But I think this is a module I really like. Not that I don't like other modules, but I like this one. And then once we get into Universal Design for Learning, because I think these are the ones that start to really pry open the different ways to deliver service to students. So again, various co-teaching documents. You have an assignment here. You have to complete a scavenger hunt. No, you don't have to, go out and, find a street sign or something like that. That would be illegal. We would never ask you to do that in this course. But you do need to interview someone who is teaching and ask them questions about co-teaching and about their co-teaching model, or do an observation. It's delineated in there. Now, some of you will contact me, or some of you right now will say, well, I'm not teaching right now, or in my school, like, this is impossible because we are a parochial school and we don't serve students with disabilities. Well, two things. One is you can either say, like, if in my environment, if we were to co-teach, this is what it would need to look like. Or you can call upon a previous experience you've had, or you can contact somebody in the class and ask if you could maybe interview them or something like that. So there are ways to do this, okay? This is a hard assignment to do in summer. It's harder to do in summer, but right now, this time of year, there's different ways to approach this to make it work. So, and if you really have something you're unsure of, like, if I'm gonna try this, and you want to run it past me, do it, and I'll say, I do this, or here's another idea. But it's very doable. Continue to be active posters. Some of you are, some of you aren't. So make sure you're getting in. And one is you're getting your post done for anything that does have a due date on it. You need to make sure that you're doing that. Absolutely need to make sure that you're doing that. So that's one key. And then the other part is, just the class is more vibrant and more fluid the more posts that people have, the more feedback they're giving to other students and to the material. So some of you are very active and some of you aren't very active. So if you're not very active, kind of make that your goal here in the last couple modules of class to jump in and be active. Because really, folks, once we get beyond modules 5 and 6, the final module, there isn't a whole lot going on outside of your Bill Porter plan. That's really there to let you work on that. So, take right now, through November to get in and to really be expressive in class. So we are starting now with the shout outs. Okay. Starting with Danielle. Okay, Danielle or Danny. You wrote about the mission statement. As respectful and responsible leaders, we will treat others as we want to be treated, not just in the classroom, but at all times. So my reaction to that, I think that's a great foundational statement, and for students in generational poverty or generational struggles, there might not be a reference point on like how they feel they deserve to be treated. I actually worked with a district where they were dealing with generational poverty, going 4 or 5 generations deep, where people literally didn't have doors on cupboards and stuff like that in their homes. And one of the things, I talked to an elementary principal at length, and this was just a few years ago, and it's in Wisconsin, but the principal said, We have a number of students that come to school and they haven't brushed their teeth. It's just not part of the culture at home, and they didn't know any better, really, to brush their teeth. That they, and what would happen then is, they would get to be young adults or get to be high school and out, for job interviews, and of course, they don't have good dental care, and it's going to impact their first impression and things like that. So what the school did is they felt, we talk about, again, wanting to be treat all people the same, of saying, everybody deserves to have a toothbrush and to have clean teeth. So they had, I believe it was a Lions Club donate toothbrush, and local dentist. And every day, every student in that school brushes their teeth in the morning. Every single student. It's just part of the culture. And they put it in as talking about this, what you deserve. I mean, you deserve to be, clean, and to respect yourself is to taking care of your hygiene, making sure that you're brushing your teeth, you're combing your hair, and some of those things. So that's really where they started at in getting to the core of kind of your statement. So I like where you're going with there, and just wanted to point out that one of the districts that I worked with took that down to a really grassroots level. So Courtney, in your comprehensive response about the circle of courage, and thank you, it was very comprehensive, I appreciate that. You wrote mastery is another important component of the circle of courage, mastery. So I agree with that. And I'm also going to caution that mastery is often conflated with attainment, okay? So we have to remember we need to celebrate growth from baseline. So there are going to be things that none of us are going to master. There will be, I will never master bowling, okay? No matter what, I can maybe improve at it and whatever, but I'm not going to master it. I'm not going to master typing. At this point, no, it's just not going to happen for me. Which is okay, but growth from baseline. So I think sometimes when we get into mastery, it creates almost this plus minus situation of either we've reached it or we haven't, and it kind of overshadows the opportunity to celebrate attainment. So what did I specifically write here? First, always celebrate growth from baseline, and second, there are some things we will be better at. So we need to make sure we don't divert time and energy from our strengths in order to nudge up our weaknesses. There's a video by Marcus Buckingham in our week 6 module where he talks about that. It's called Trombone Player 1. It is about 16, 17 minutes long. You will be fascinated by it. But he really talks about playing to your strengths and how that is so important to do, is to play to your strengths. And not that you don't not that you don't recognize your weaknesses, but it's like if you come home with a report card, you have an A, an A, an A, a B, and an F. What's the reaction? And a lot of people say, well, you want to bring that F up, okay? And it's not the reaction of, well, we have the 3 A's and we have the B. We want to make sure those stay where they're at, or that maybe that B can be nudged up. So it's not like you would make a sacrifice of taking the 3 A's and moving them all to B's in order to move that F up to a B. So like everything's B. So that's kind of where Marcus Buckingham comes in, and I think there's some really great wisdom to be taken about that when we work with students. And it's okay to let students know on some things like, this just isn't your thing, and we all have that. So, but, you've got other things which are your things. So capitalize on that and then mitigate, whatever isn't your strength. Left-handed layups in basketball, not my strength, no matter how much I practice. I can compensate by, doing a little more with the right hand and some other things and whatever. But Allison P. Okay, Allison, you wrote, we will remind one another that no one is in this alone. We are not just individuals, but we are individuals that make up one unique team. Thank you for writing that. I believe you're getting at a term called connectedness. It's a huge part of student success in academics, attendance, behavior, not acting out in violent ways. Again, connectedness. If you go to the CDC, Centers for Disease Control website, if you just type in CDC plus connectedness in a Google search, you'll find the website, and you'll find the website dedicated to connectedness. So you're totally on the mark. School connectedness is a huge factor. Again, we're remind one another that we're not in this alone. We're connected to each other. We're connected to the school. We're connected to the community. So I argued in my May 22nd, 2013 PBS presentation about school safety that we should give schools report cards for their level of connectedness and their efforts on connectedness because of the wide-ranging impact that it has on academics, attendance, behavior, and then also, school violence. But they're not out there. Probably never will be. Mitchell, you wrote, the times have changed and what is expected of students out of high school has changed as well. Students entering the world today have to learn how to learn and how to be a lifelong inquirer. Mitchell, I like that term, lifelong inquirer. Okay, and I want to expand that a little bit to, yeah, we need to be lifelong inquirers without a doubt, but it's become more sophisticated just recently in the last 5-10 years. Like when you and I went to school, to be a lifelong inquirer, we could kind of trust what was presented as fact versus what was presented as rhetoric. We can't do that today anymore. There's many instances of fake news, and we know that there are complete countries out there in the world, and I'm not talking about Russia. There was documentaries on countries, small countries, where the people make their living just writing fake news articles and trying to get them on Yahoo and Google. And they do pretty well with this. And these fake news narratives, and then also investigative journalism is kind of out the window. That just doesn't happen anymore. It's whatever's on the headlines today, tomorrow, the next day, and then it's gone. So we have to also teach kids, to be inquirers, but also use different sources and ask questions, okay? And it's very important to do that. An example, so after the Sandy Hook shooting, after the Sandy Hook school shooting, for about 2 weeks, and some of you might remember this, some of you might not, but for about 2 weeks after the Sandy Hook shooting, there was a narrative that started to come out through the mainstream media. Sorry about hitting the mic there. It came out through the scholar, let's see, it's a little, neck's a little scratchy, but anyway, through the mainstream media, there was this narrative that came out of saying, you know what, Adam Lanza was a young man with autism. Okay, so he's a young man with autism, and maybe there's a connection between autism and lack of empathy, which sometimes is presented as a trait of autism. Although if you know one kid with autism, guess what? You know one kid with autism. Okay, if you know one kid with autism, you know one kid with autism. But this narrative going out there and it's saying, well, maybe because of the lack of empathy, then he decided to bring harm onto all these students. So, we had all of a sudden this false narrative that was circulating for a couple of weeks. So it's one of those things too of like helping students understand rhetoric from fact and getting their facts, and that they're going to just be bombarded with rhetoric. And people tend to go with whatever they're told first of all. I mean, if someone's like, this meteor is going to, head it toward the earth or whatever, that's probably what they're going with, until they might do some research or do some other additional thing. I mean, Rebecca. So Rebecca, in response to the Rita Pearson video you wrote, that Rita shared, "You're not all bad." She shared it with her students. And you wrote, I think we all need to be reminded of this often, and students even more so. And I like that because something that happens from these fireside chats is it's very often in a class that students will email me and they'll say, thank you for giving me a shout out in a fireside chat, because I haven't received a shout out at school. And I feel like, I've been doing some really good things, and just like not that I have to continually get a pat on the back, but the Fireside chat, you gave me a shout out. It's a good thing, and I felt good about it. So thank you for doing it. So it makes a big difference that we recognize that there's a lot of good in teachers. There's a lot of good in students. And there are going to be times that we're going to struggle, and it's like, hey, if you struggle, you struggle. But there's going to be things that you're going to do which you're going to excel at, and I really like that. So, and I think of this, so you put this together. But what if like 100 years ago, the inventors who are making all different kinds of things, a lot of them would make 100, 200 prototypes, and every time they would learn a little bit, but it might be a complete failure until they came across a prototype that actually worked. And the question is, does that still kind of happen today? Does it happen in education where you can do like trials? Can you try different things to try to figure out learning, and really where you have divergent type assignments where kids can try different ways to come up with solutions for problems. It might be you're going to, like a Sim City type thing. You're gonna build a city, and you have to come up with solutions to deal with growth for your population, and clean water, and making sure you have enough crops and things like this. So how you going to do these things and balance all of this stuff out? And actually, so if you gave everybody like a Sim City type program, that they're all going to kind of come up with different ways to do that. So, but yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Kelly, you wrote the following about diversity education. You said, for me, the hardest part about exposing kids to diversity in the classroom is how their parents react to it, and how that then affects the kid. Very true. And I don't know how this is delicate to work with, because it's not only parents. It can be school boards too. A few years ago, there was a student in one of my inclusion classes, and that student shared an experience and did share like newspaper clippings that scanned in, some things like that. But basically, the school district, the high school wanted to start a Gay Straight Alliance, a GSA, and did have students who indicated that they wanted that they felt they had, it was time. This would be a support for them. This was going to be a move toward diversity. School board did not approve it, did not approve the committee, and under their policy or whatever, all committees had to go to the school board, high school committees, or before they would be approved, and they didn't approve it. And it got to the point where, and they didn't really have a good rationale for not approving it, because the committee had gone through all the due diligence appropriate steps. But it got to the point where some community members got behind this, and they would meet, I think, at a community space, and actually built enough momentum. And I don't know if they started this on their own, independent of the school, or if then eventually the school had agreed to it. But it is something where it is hard to change tradition and mindsets. And I think you need to take incremental steps in some of those things to kind of just understanding where you're at. But yeah, I mean, the school definitely, there was appropriate rationale, and there was the due diligence for the GSA, and it was just people who were saying, we don't need a GSA here, and for whatever reason. But Lisa. So I was very happy that you mentioned Jack Welch, the former leader of General Electric. And actually, Jack Welch had a 20-year reign as the head of GE. You talked about how he fostered innovation at all levels. People could come forward with their ideas and quickly kind of work them through a chain of communication up to management and to leadership, and how GE really grew significantly under Jack Welch's time. And I studied Jack Welch extensively. a few things about Jack Welch. He was on the floor of the different plants at GE, and he would shake hands and but he was there in kind of the workflows. He'd go up to somebody and say, what exactly do you do here? Like, explain your job. Like, what are you doing? So he understood. And if people had ideas, he would encourage it. Like, if we're making something and you're part of this project and you see a better way it can happen, bring it forward. And there was something called leadership transference with Jack Welch. So think of Jack Welch as being like a principal, maybe, a school leader or a superintendent, someone who might have, be with a district for a while and is very easy to approach and wants to hear your ideas. And just what it's like to work for somebody like that. And all of you, going through Viterbo, a servant leadership program, people who are looking to you as you maybe move into positions of department heads or even just being a leader in your building, at your grade level, whatever it might be, people recognize leaders. People recognize support staff that are leaders, support staff that are exceptional with like assistive technology or with, certain, behavior things or whatever it might be. So it is something where his model, and there were others, but I think Jack Welch is a terrific example of a leader who is listening and encouraging people at all levels. And if you think of a school, including like all the way from a custodian to an aide to a teacher to an assistant principal to a specialist, whatever, to be able to safely give input. And we see models today, just corporate models, one that don't really have this. I mean, there's turnover in corporate models. Yahoo's a good example. And what was it, Marissa Meyer, who ironically I grew up 10 miles away from. She, the leader of Yahoo for a few years, had an office which I believe was inside of several walled areas that she could press and they could all dim. So there was basically like no way to get to her. So and very much distancing from anyone who's working at Yahoo. So and we just tend to see that more and more. And I think we see it even in school administrators. I don't know so much about principals. I think principals are out on the floor type people. But I've known a number of superintendents who live from their superintendent office. They don't leave the chair. And so in those cases, it's really a different management and leadership model. So again, thank you for mentioning Jack Welch and GE and just fostering where anybody with an idea can come up and present that idea. Dustin, when writing about a benefit of inclusion, you noted children acquire long-lasting friendships. I agree. I think sometimes that's accurate. Children acquire long-lasting friendships, but the question is, like, how many of us are still friends with people we graduated high school with? I maybe know a few people I graduated high school with. That's it. And people I graduated college with, a couple. So I think the skill probably more is how to build friendships, what a friendship is, and that friendship is mutual, and it's someone investing as much interest in you as you are investing in them, and how again to form friendships in different scenarios, teaching the friendship skills, which is like to get icebreakers and how to get to know people. But as we travel through life, our group of friends will always change. So I don't know if the goal, and I don't think you wrote goal, but the benefit of inclusion, I'm not sure if it is necessarily lifelong friendships, but I think it is the ability to understand how to engage in friendships, reciprocate in friendships, and maybe also to realize when a relationship isn't benefiting you as much, that and you can exit from it. So the this is, we see friendship circles sometimes in school. I have mixed feelings about that. I think some of those are forced and staged, and I don't think you can force anyone to be a friend with anyone else. As a learning thing, I think you can kind of use things like that to say, how would you learn about other people? And questions that you might ask and things like that. And Dustin, they continue to be an active poster. Justin, you wrote, one of the 4 elements of the circle of courage, belonging, mastery, independence, and generosity. Belonging is perhaps the most important. Thank you for noting that. As I mentioned earlier, this aligns with the CDC's work on school connectedness. Ironically, school connectedness is strongly researched and correlated influence on positive school outcomes. Yet again, we don't see it on school report cards. So you're right there. You're right there with belonging. And we need to see that given more priority, like on a school report card, because the school, frankly, is going to put the emphasis on what they get measured on. And when you look at like realtor.com, if they're trying to get people to move into the community and stuff like that, and businesses, they're seeing the academic performance of schools, and nowhere in that do they see any report out on connectedness, although that is so, so important. So, all right, we move on. Brendan, in a response to Allison, you wrote, my favorite part of that statement is lend a listening ear. It was a statement that Brendan made about lending a listening ear. I think that statement strikes home for me, as I recall, I recall listening to a staff member about 10 years ago, and about 3 minutes in, the staff member looked at me and said, Dave, you've already made up your mind. I can tell, so I'm not going to talk anymore. And I hadn't said anything, but the staff member was true. I had made up my mind on this matter. So as this person talked, my body language was saying, I'm not interested anymore. So I think when we talk about lending a listening ear, it's also, that we are aware of what our body language is telling someone, and that we're making eye contact. And truly, this person called me out, rightfully so. This, was an integral person on my staff, and I did need to listen to what they were saying, and I needed to use that to inform myself. And I already had my mind made up on something, and it was an instance where, somebody called me out on it. So again, thank you for pointing that out. Allie, you wrote, each month we could talk about and role play different scenarios or skills in addition to having an open discussion. So yeah, Allie, role playing is a great way to learn. It's a great way to learn. It's also uncomfortable for some. Not everyone's going to want to do that. It's just like when you get to a conference, and then you have the presenter who does the icebreaker of, okay, everybody stand up and now talk to someone at least 5 seats from you and ask them 3 questions. I'm like, okay, do we really have to do this? I'm not comfortable with that. It's kind of not my thing. So I think you want to make sure you get people ahead of time who are comfortable with role playing. And then open discussions are greatly needed in school. So you're right there. So again, you wrote, each month we could talk about the role play scenarios or skills in addition to having an open discussion. Open discussion, very, very important. And put down some ground rules at the start of saying, hey, we're going to have this much time, and we want to hear what everybody, has to say. But this isn't a session, this is not the airing of grievances. This isn't the Festivus where we tell what we're angry with everything. And the part 2 is, or the additional part of that is, if you have something that you want to bring up that's maybe an issue, have a solution available too. Okay, that is a big plus. If you kind of have those ground rules of saying, I don't like the fact that, when we're having kids run in the hallway, to lunch, that people are releasing at different times, for example. And it's creating a problem because, we do have some students who we do need to get down to lunchroom earlier because it takes them longer to navigate through the lunch line and things like that. And now that's not working as well. That's one thing to say that. Now, you can come out and say, so this is what I'd like people to consider. Could you do this? And then once you do and you have that solution that follows, that totally changes the way that you're presenting that information. So I really like that. Skylar, you expanded a conversation about, I think it is an incredibly important distinction between learning together and learning in the same space. Absolutely. Learning together has to do more with inclusion. Learning in the same space has more to do with mainstreaming. So learning together is active. Learning in the same space is passive. So yeah, and again, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, we covered that early in class, but it's good to bring it back right now, just as a reminder that inclusion and mainstreaming are different things, yet from an outsider's perspective, they might look to be the same things, or they could even just be named the same things, but they're significantly different. Selena! For a mission statement you wrote, in the classroom, we will spread our knowledge and love for school subjects, and we will participate in the educational growth of our fellow students. I like that, okay? I like this, and encourage you to make it more descriptive for parents. So it's, I don't know how to, it's a statement that's written at a pretty high register or pretty high vernacular. Meaning if you have parents who are struggle with English proficiency, or parents who might have had special education services themselves, they're probably not fully getting this concept of like spread our knowledge, love for school subjects, participate in educational growth. So what I would do is, I think your mission statement is solid. I would go down below, and I tell people to do this on a very frequent basis in IEP meetings too. I say, give examples. So, and here's what I would do as a recommendation. So perhaps an example underneath your mission statement, one example could be, we will be able to demonstrate to others what we learned, such as reading a book to them or showing them how to solve a problem. So here you talk about, we will spread our knowledge. Okay, that like right there is a tangible example that a parent can read and be like, okay, yeah, I get it now. Like I see where this links in. So I think you can, those are like little bullet points that kind of go underneath and say like, here are some examples of how we would meet this mission statement, or how this mission statement will look in the classroom. So I don't think you need to change a mission statement, because you don't have to, mission statement doesn't have to be full itself with examples, but I think to go underneath and to put some examples. I write my quarterly updates and things like that and stuff for parents in a much different manner now than I ever did before. I get very, very descriptive. And something too, because I'm an expert witness in court cases, something I do is, I write very much for the jury. Well, that's what you do as an expert witness. You're writing for the judge and the jury. You're not writing for the plaintiff or defendant. But I'm writing in very descriptive terms that they can understand, because this, again, they're probably not as familiar with the topic, whether it's educational jargon, and instead of just writing about LRE, least restrictive environment. Well, what does that mean? Well, okay, least restrictive environment means that the IEP team needs to get together and look at a range of placements where the student could receive educational services, from the classroom to partial in classroom, partial pull-out with different supports, to possibly all pull-out, services where they're in a special education classroom with just a couple other students. So like if I'm on a jury or something, I can understand that. And I think it's the same thing kind of with parents. So Lisa K. For your mission statement, you wrote, our limitations do not define us, and failure will be seen as a chance to try again. I like that. I like that a lot. People are so afraid to take on the word failure in anything these days. It has been completely scrubbed from so many academic documents. It's been stigmatized. And the reality is all of us fail at something. I mean, we watch any sports, I mean, there will be times if you're playing baseball, you'll strike out. In soccer, you will miss a goal and things like that. I mean, it's just failure just means it's a learning opportunity. And if we never had failure, I mean, we would all be completely, basically the same, and there would be no diversity really in life. I mean, kind of think about it. I mean, if we never failed, if everything was always the same or almost identical in a similar aspect. So no, and I like how you did that. So I have an example. I was coaching boys basketball, and my star athlete Rob was tremendous. Like, he first all team, just a great basketball player. And after the season, we got together at a bowling alley, all of the players, and we did a bowling outing with pizza and stuff like that. And guess what? Rob, horrible bowler. Horrible. We had a fun time, but horrible bowler. And a lot of people, like, kind of couldn't believe it. They're like, well, Rob's a great basketball player. He should be a great bowler. He should be a great baseball player. He should be great at this. He should be great at that. And it was like, no, it doesn't transfer into all of these other things, and that's okay. I mean, and that's just the way it is for all of us, So, Jared, you wrote, and I wasn't aware of this. You wrote a post went viral on Facebook over the weekend. A teacher wrote a letter home to the family of an autistic boy who bombed his standardized test. The letter enumerated all the talents the boy has that a standardized test can never measure. All students have talents, are built up. When we recognize those talents, students should never be reduced to their struggles. We must look at every child holistically and celebrate their strengths. At the same time, we address their weaknesses. So I don't have an argument with that at all. I didn't realize that had gone viral on Facebook. And no need to add on to the fact that standardized tests are very narrow and are only one snapshot in time of how performance is, plus, like, some students demonstrate well through a test and some students don't. So in a particular sliver of whatever is being measured. So again, thanks for sharing that. And I think Module 6. So when we get into Module 6, you're going to watch the Marcus Buckingham video of Trombone Player Won It. It's on YouTube in case you want to go see it. But it's like 17 minutes long. But he does talk about the fact of, all of us, and it's focused on in elementary school, but, we all have strengths. And sometimes we got to play to those strengths. And it's going to mean that we're not going to spend as much time on the weaknesses, and it's kind of this cost-benefit analysis. Like, I know an author who dictates all of her books because she just doesn't type very fast, and when she does type, it kind of slows down her thinking problem. So she just dictates all of her books into Dragon Naturally Speaking. Works for her. I haven't really tried it, but I know I'm not a very efficient typer, and I know I'm just not going to get really any better, so maybe it's something that works for me. So in that case, it is a tool. The technology out there too, I think, has changed the landscape for us. It's, a question comes up too. I'm going to put this one out there and kind of wrap it up with this, but do you need to know the 50 state capitals anymore? I had to know those when I was in 5th grade. We were tested on them. I think I got like 48 right. And do you need to know that anymore? Do you need to know it? I would argue you don't. I mean, I could pick up my phone right here, and within seconds, I can get all of the state capitals. And I think the thing is, we are in that technology right now. We kind of crossed over it in 2012. There's numerous studies that say in 2012 we passed into a social media plus using Android devices to access information age for the majority of us, and we'll continue in that way, but we passed it and we'll never go back. It's like when you've gone from you know, the horse and buggy to, you know, the automobile to whatever is going to come next, autonomous cars or whatever. I mean, these will be milestones you'll never go back upon. You know, radio to TV to cable TV, now through, you know, on demand, through internet, you know, shows and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's just, I think we also, we have to realize the technology's there. We have to embrace the technology and be thankful that we have it. And I think it frees up things too that we don't have to spend time on trying to learn if we know how to access the information. The only thing is, if it's not rote information, we got to also know like how to artfully do that in a way that's not going to bring up a whole bunch of rhetoric that we have to sift through. But anyway, so thank you very much. Please continue to be active posters. I will make a post over the weekend that grades will be up, so just wait for that. Probably won't be out till Sunday. Be active posters. Once we get through this module, Module 5, which is going to open on Monday, I will open 6 and 7 together. And, you know, we're getting down on November 7th is my birthday. December 8th is the last day of class. So thank you very much. I am enjoying this class. Feel free to contact me with any questions. And I am wishing you the very best on this summer, which seems to never end. All right. Thank you very much.